Okay, everybody, I already introduced myself, but for good measure, I'll do it again. I'm Mackenzie. I'm a software developer on the open data team for the city of Toronto. And today I want to talk about a question that me and my teammates ask ourselves quite a bit. Is our open data any good? It's an important question. If the answer is no, I'll lose my job. So this answer being yes is important. And we actually, jokes aside, we do take this question seriously. We've got some measures that we've put in place and some measures that we've recently improved to actually measure if we're providing good or good enough data. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to do that in 3 different parts. First, I need to introduce the program. This is Civic Tech Toronto. Most of you already know what Open Data Toronto is, but to level set, just going to quickly introduce the program. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea of good data. I'm not going to delve into the philosophical weeds of all of that. I'm just going to talk to you about it in the context of my team, what we've done. And then I'm going to try to convince you guys that you should care. After that, I think we'll have some time for questions. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to stop a couple of times for questions, or would you rather wait for them all at the end? Do you have a preference? I'll do them at the end. So as we're going then, if you see something you want to ask a question about, I'll stop at a couple of slides that have some details in them. I'll ask you if you want, and I can go back to those slides at the end and we can chat about it. So before I introduce what open data is, let me introduce myself and my team again. I'm one of 3 software developers on a 5-person team, the open data team in the city of Toronto. We've also got a manager and a comms lead. And short version, we manage a website called open.toronto.ca. That is the city of Toronto's open data portal, and that's where we provide data sets about the city of Toronto's bureaucracy. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We manage some code bases. We manage that data's catalog. We also manage a Twitter page, a blog, and a inbox that anyone can message. So if you guys have questions after this, we'll share that inbox address for you. We check that like hourly, so it's a real thing and we use it. Now, let's talk about what open data is. We all have an idea of what it is, but specific to us, it's data that is publicly available and made by, managed by the City of Toronto government. When we say data, we're talking about something that's available in a machine-readable format. By that, I mean something that a software program can read. So I'm not talking about PDFs, not talking about pictures. I'm talking about things that vaguely resemble rows and columns. That's nuanced. We can talk details if you want, because that's not technically true, but that's the idea of what I'm getting at. And it's open because anyone can use it whenever. You don't need to make an account. You don't need to log in. You don't even need to give us your email address. You come, you click, you download. And if you make a fortune off of it, that's great. You don't even have to credit us. It's better if you do, but that's what makes it open. Now, we try to provide that data in as many different formats as we can. We try to provide it to you by API where possible. And to repeat myself, our website isn't something you need special access to. Anyone, anywhere in the world can access, use it, download stuff, hit our API endpoints. It's all there for anybody. One little footnote for anyone who's more policy-minded and less computer-minded, we have a master plan document. I don't have a link for you, but go to Google, Toronto, Open Data Master Plan. You'll find it right away. It's big, and if anyone is interested in it, you'll see that it ended in 2022. That's technically, at the time when we wrote it, was true, but COVID extended that timeline. We just haven't changed that document. Happy to talk to anybody who has questions about that later. Okay, finally, let's talk about what we mean by good data. And I'm not talking about morally good data. I'm talking about technically or qualitatively good data. And the best way that we found to assess that, as a lot of people have, is, well, giving it a data quality score. Our team, a couple of years ago, started assigning a very simple, very low resolution score to data sets. And so what we've done recently, we made that a little higher resolution. We started getting more details about what a score is and why a score was assigned to a particular data set. Now, before we got into this, we Googled what a data quality score was, and Wiki gave us this garbage definition: the state of qualitative or quantitative pieces of information, which is useless. So we sat and we thought about it, and we realized that the answer to what a data quality score for us is going to depend on context. And this is where things start to get a little more contentful, because the context of the open data portal for the city of Toronto is this. We consume many data sets in 40 plus divisions within the city bureaucracy. These divisions are not necessarily parts of one unified hive mind. You have to think of them as very distinct entities under the same city of Toronto umbrella. Sure, we all work together, but for example, the IT requirements of Toronto Fire are going to be wildly different from the IT needs of city planning. They have different needs, they have different setups, and so our mission is to make sure that we can connect with each of these 40 plus divisions and provide people with usable data. And when I say provide people with usable data, I mean everybody, us, the public, sure. But I also mean people within the city bureaucracy. Because it's really easy for somebody in one division who's looking for data about the city just to come to our portal instead of finding out in the email, dealing with networking stuff. It's actually helpful in both ways, both for the city outward and inward. So that's our context. We have an idea of what a score is. We have an idea of what the world is that we're trying to make the score. And now let's talk shop. Let's talk details. We, after a lot of thinking and talking to people both in the public and within the city, decided to break down a data quality score into 5 dimensions, 5 bits, 5 categories, 5 whatever you call them. We call them dimensions. Accessibility, usability, completeness, freshness, and metadata. And using some not too complicated math, we take some metrics in those dimensions, cram them all together to make a score. That score gets translated to gold, silver, or bronze. Good, decent, or not so good. Each of those 5 dimensions can be defined as follows. I'll read them out quick. If you have definitions about what more they mean or why we chose these as opposed to something else, I'm happy to talk about it a little bit after. The first, usability. How easy is your data to work with? Second, metadata. Is your data well contextualized? Is our data well contextualized or described? Freshness, simple. Is the data up to date or is it stale? Completeness. Is there a lot of data missing? And then finally, accessibility. Is the data easy to use for many different kinds of users? Now, I've got more granular slide here. I see people leaning forward. I'm going to break down each of these bit by bit because this slide is terrible. I'm really sorry about that. But just to give you an idea, each of these 5 metrics, each of these 5 dimensions are broken down into a couple of metrics. And each of those dimensions also have a different weight, a general weight of how important they are for that final gold, silver, bronze score. We've chosen that weight based off of what we at the Open Data team have decided to emphasize as we look to improve the data quality in our portal. So you can see up there, for example, freshness and metadata take up the lion's share of a data quality score. And that's because when we've talked to both our partners internally, when we've talked to people in the public, and when we look at the catalog, the wealth of data that we have, there's a lot of stuff that is old and stale, and that's a problem because that data becomes useless in a lot of cases. We also know that data becomes a lot less useful when it doesn't have context, when you don't know what division it came from, when you don't have a person to contact and you have a question about it, when the columns aren't defined. These things are important, and that's why they take up 70%. That's why freshness takes up 70%. Freshness and metadata, take up the lion's share of this score. Now I'm going to go through each of these, give a quick snippet of how we calculated each of them, and then we can talk a little bit about any questions you might have about that at the end. So first, freshness, the most straightforward. Has data been refreshed on the schedule that was expected? So we have data sets that claim to refresh daily, and we have data sets that claim to refresh weekly, monthly, yearly, and so on. If a daily data set hasn't been updated in a week, its score gets penalized. Similarly, if a data set hasn't been updated in 2 years, for whatever reason, it gets additionally penalized. This makes it so that we don't have data sets that are sitting there getting extra stuff, and lets us throw a flag at the data owner saying, hey, you have a data set that we've had up there for a long time, hasn't been touched. We need you to make a decision if you're going to keep it up there or maybe retire it because it might not be useful to you. Next, metadata. How do we contextualize the data? We have a list of different metadata attributes that we require data owners to give us when they share data on the portal, just so people understand, oh, this data on COVID cases, it comes from Toronto Public Health. Here's the contact information. If you have questions, here's the unit and team that manage it, and so on. We make sure that all of those fields have been provided. We also make sure that contact information is an actual email address and not just the open data inbox, because as much as I can tell you about the portal, I can't tell you much about COVID cases. I'm not a subject matter expert, neither is my team. We make sure that when people give us a learn more URL, which is something you can click on our portal if you want to go to a link associated with that data set, we make sure it's like a website that doesn't return a 500, for lack of a better word. And we make sure that they've actually defined the data that they've given us. So if they give us a column called episode date, is that the date that an episode of COVID, for example, started, ended, whatever. We check all those things, and that's how we store metadata. Next, accessibility. We make sure that data sets have been given little keywords or tags so that they're easy to find, kind of like in Google search when you can go to our homepage, you look up disease, you might find COVID. We also make sure if data sets are being given to us, we want to make sure these data sets are connected to a pipeline so that this data can update automatically, and not just somebody emailing us and then us manually putting it up, because that's how things get forgotten, lost. That's how data gets stale. And also, we have a preference for people giving us data that we can put into our database. And there are technical reasons for that that I can discuss with anybody who might be interested afterwards. Finally, completeness, usability. Completeness is pretty simple. If somebody gives us a data set and half of its cells, for lack of a better word, are empty, it's dinged. And that's just, in a lot of cases, if that happens, somebody has probably made a technical issue. Sorry, there has been a technical issue to load. We want to catch that. And then finally, we want to make sure that people give us column names in their data sets that are meaningful, specifically in English. And we want to make sure that the column values that they give us aren't just one thing. It doesn't just say none 10,000 times. Now, we've used similar metrics like that before, but what I'm showing you here, what I'll walk through with you in a little bit, is what the interface for this looks like now. And you know what? Why don't I just show you the real interface? Why am I showing you slides? This is silly. So what I have up is a page up on our portal for COVID cases. You can see up here, you assign a simple data quality score of gold. That's great. This is good data, right? But you don't know why. More importantly, if I go to another data set, this one about construction and demolition violations, this one has been given silver. Well, okay, great, but what's wrong with it? Click. I have this new, as of a couple of weeks ago, little accordion tab that appears on the page called data quality. And it will give you some information about when this score was refreshed, what that score you saw above was, what that score is on 100, and then some information about each of those dimensions that I mentioned for you below, what that dimension was scored out of 100, and why it was scored that way, what known issues were found with the data. And if for at any point in time you want to know what exactly is being measured, metadata, we've got a little very accessible to keyboard, screen readers, etc. button there that shows you what the rules are. You can see that for particular grades, gold, silver, bronze, we have particular scores, and the scores can get lower, depending on if a particular data set is 28 quarters behind their declared schedule, which happens. And that's why we have the score, so we can keep track of these things. And so the owners can be better alerted when that problem has arisen, because they've got lots to worry about. So, finally, why should you care? Why should anyone care? Well, it's my job, so please care. But for data consumers, it's a good sniff test. By no means do we say, oh, if this data set is bronze, don't use it. We're not saying that at all. In fact, we're saying the opposite. We're trying to throw out some flags, some words of caution for you as you consume data to keep in mind as you go about actually using it. By no means are we saying bronze data should not be used. Let me make that very clear. what's the word? Calling things out for you that you should consider as you use the data. It's also cool because all these scores have been made into their own data set, which is kind of meta. So if you want to track the data quality of all of these different data sets over time, feel free. We're going to do it eventually, but if you guys beat us to it, we'll totally publish it and you can take all the credit. I'm not lying. Now, this is also important for us at the Open Data team who manage the catalog, because it lets us really easily answer questions like, are things being kept up to date? Is there metadata missing? Are people forgetting to define the data in our catalog? And that's important for us because we want to provide quality data, not just a quantity of data. And already, I said, what, if we deploy this update 2 weeks ago, we've already got a quantitative number that I can't remember off the top of my head, that we have lots of data owner contact information, like lots. We don't know a lot of people who reach out to when there are problems with data. And that's important for us to know so we can start digging, provide it to you, keep it for us. And lastly, and in my opinion, quite importantly, it's also for the data owners. Data owners who have good scores, they now have a separate level of public credibility. They now have a level of authority saying that, hey, this data, it's good, you can use it, you can. Additionally, for those data owners, this score isn't calculated manually, they don't have to contribute to it, they don't have to press a button to update it, it just happens for them, and they don't have to worry about it. And then finally, and this is actually part of the reason why I was so excited to present here at Civic Tech, is this enables conversation between open data and the public, sure, but also between open data and the owners, and then eventually the owners and the public, and everybody in between. About all kinds of things. But most importantly, what kind of feedback, what kind of input the public and various data users are going to have about how the score can be improved, reduced, increased, I don't know, for different contexts, different kinds of data sets. And that's why I was so excited to present today. I'm going to be sticking around to answer questions now, and then afterwards, if people have more questions. But if for some reason you can't make it, here's all the different ways you can get in touch with us. GitHub, Twitter, is that an email? That's an email, and then our website. We check this all the time. We check this all the time, let me say that. So if you have a question, do not hesitate. Send us a message, and we'll be happy to answer. Thank you guys very much.
Let's take this and just start your video. When everyone can see you, we'll leave the slide up. Sure. Hey, I'm back. We're going to do a Q&A. So similar introductions, we'd like to do this kind of hybrid. So we'll start online. If you have a question, by all means, put a Q or any other letter in the chat, and we'll call on you. And we like to kind of go back and forth. So we'll take a question online, we'll take a question in the room, and so on. And we've got about 10 minutes or so for questions. Awesome. Em, is there any questions online?
No questions yet. Everyone should feel free to type a Q. Maybe I'll ask a question to get us started. So what is the maybe coolest or most unexpected use of a data set that you've seen?
Actually, one of the people who presented at Civic Tech, I want to say in like the spring, I can't remember his name, talking about street tree data. He did a thing on street tree data a while ago. Oh, I spoke to him and I can't remember his name. He's really cool. Ethan, yes. Ethan did an analysis on how like the abundance of trees relates to like different measures of socioeconomic status of different neighborhoods in the city, which was like a pretty weird but also a super cool way to look at things in Toronto. If you guys can dig up his work, it was super cool. I recommend taking a look.
Awesome. Question in the room.
Are all Canadian LinkedIn account to sign up with the ID? Do you know about that?
I think I missed the first part of it.
That means that you have to verify yourself in order to use LinkedIn.
In order to use what? Sorry.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. You're asking me if I've heard that I need to verify my identity. I mean, I've like with my own LinkedIn, I don't have to verify who I am, but beyond that, no. Sorry, I feel like I'm missing an important point. Yeah, great question. So, like in general, there's almost no point answering that question. But specific to our use case, there definitely is, and that's what we've done our best job of doing. For us, it was something that will allow somebody to see if this data is going to be worth their while. So making sure that that data is as up to date as it can be, making sure that there aren't any obvious technical issues with it, and making sure that when you use the data, you have a well-painted picture of context around it. That metadata piece, you know, where it came from and who owns it, what the various attributes in it mean in plain English. For us, that's a data quality. In the grand scheme of data in the world, that's a lot harder question to answer. I'm not going to talk about that. But I hope that at least answers your question for our content.
There's actually a question next to you. Sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that clearly. Are you prompting an online
the
question?
data set that has overlap between what's provided nationwide versus what's just opened, offered by Toronto? Like, I never fully explored the difference, but do you happen to know what data quality difference like for example, like tree canopy coverage?
Short answer, no. But it's a cool question. And here's why it's cool. So different, let's say we're just looking at cities nationwide, right? And different cities are going to have different kinds of ways of, for example, measuring street tree data or canopy cover. For us to be able to do that, this would be a super cool exercise. In fact, I've got a meeting with like the open data cities on Thursday, so I'll pitch this to them. For us to be able to do that, we'd all have to agree on what a data quality score would be for that data set. And then we'd all have to assign one for our respective data sets. Then we'd have to compare. So my short answer is I don't know what that would be. My long answer is that's a really cool idea.
All right. Em, is there any other questions online?
Yeah, we have a question from Ingrid.
Hi there. Great presentation, Mac. I love how the open data portal keeps pushing forward. That's awesome. And I'm really glad that the KSI data is now up to date as well. So yay. Where do you see the open data portal going in the future? Do you guys look at other cities? Are there other cities doing cool stuff? Is there citizen submitted data? Like there's going to be next gen 311 and 911 coming in. So there's the future for data is bright. So how is Toronto Open Data gonna capitalize on that?
So I'm going to give you the short answer, and then Ingrid, happy to chat more because there's a long answer. I'll tell you when it comes to publicly sourced data sets, that's still something on our radar. You're still on our radar, Ingrid, don't worry. There's also a conversation we're needing to have with the fellow actually from Civic Tech who helped create, I should say, Bike Space, which is the citizen-fueled data collection app for bike parking in the city of Toronto. Something super cool. We've been meeting to have a conversation with him. That's vis-a-vis publicly sourced data. Now, general forward directions, there's a lot. I mean, just data quality scoring alone, like this is our second iteration of it. We know it's not perfect. We know there's a lot of things that can be added. We know there's a lot of nuance and even minor issues with what we've made. So we know we want to make it better. When we do that, we'd also really love to be able to package it into an extension of some kind where other open data portals could just plug it in. Right now, ours is very tailored to the city of Toronto use case, and that's great for us. But if, for example, Montreal wanted to do something with it, it'd be a lot more work for them to take that work and adapt it to their use case. So something we'd love to do is something along those lines. Oh man, and Ingrid, I could keep going. Like, how much time we got? One more. Okay. Yeah, okay. There's this idea that it's not an idea, it's something that we're doing. Right now, we know that people are asking for new data sets all the time. But when that happens, it's coming to us through an inbox or maybe through Twitter or maybe through a conversation. And there's not a good way to publicize what new data sets we're in the process of publishing. And that's something we'd like to do a better job of. We'd like to have some type of a queue where people can go on and see, oh, the open data team is working on, I don't know, publicizing where there are manual versus automatic pedestrian crosswalks in the city. And we would be able to, in theory, give you a status, like when was this, when did we start doing this? Are we waiting on somebody for it? Is this been staged and we're in the final steps of it? Has it been published? That kind of thing. That's something that we've just started cooking about 2 weeks ago. Ingrid, if you want to talk more though, give me a shout. I got lots.
Awesome, thank you.
We have another question in the room just behind you.
Want to say, this is really cool. You talked about dimensions, and I really wanted to ask you, how are the weights on those dimensions decided? Like, what plays a role?
Great question. Let me just go up to those. Can I do it? Can you do it? Short answer, we did. We had a conversation. We had a conversation with, in our first iteration, with members of the public and members of the city bureaucracy. In the second iteration, we reviewed it largely with members of the city bureaucracy, people from different divisions who had different levels of presence on the open data portal. So there wasn't any complicated math or like scientific method that was put into this. What we did is we looked at each other and we said, we know that freshness, data being up to date, is a priority for us because we knew, not in a quantifiable way, but we knew just because we've been around the portal for so long, there's a lot of stale data sets that hadn't been updated in weeks, months, years. We also knew that it was a problem, and we knew this from talking with the public and other people who use the data. We knew that it was a real problem. If you download a data set, you look at it and you go, I don't know what this means. This is garbage, I can't use it, throw it out. So that's why we made freshness and metadata like of utmost importance for us. The others, accessibility, usability, and completeness, are still important, but as you can see, less. That's the long answer. The short answer is we really wanted to emphasize freshness and metadata because we knew they were pain points for us. I hope that answers your question.
Quick follow-up.
I guess in terms of freshness, how are freshness scores decided? Is it really dependent on each data set? So some data set might be like, hey, as long as it's over a month old, it's stale, or sometimes it's like over a year for data. How does that decided?
Great question. So we have two things that we look at for freshness. The first is, has the data been refreshed on schedule? Now, schedule depends on the data set. Each data set claims to be updated daily or weekly or monthly. That varies data set to data set. And so for each of those, we'll say, okay, daily data set, 1, 2, 3. You haven't been updated in 3 days, so you're going to be penalized for those 3 days. Now, if there's a weekly data set that hasn't been updated in 3 days, that's okay, because they're only supposed to be updated once a week. But if it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they get more penalized. What's fun about this too is the later the update is, the harsher we are on penalizing them. So if you're late by a day, that's bad. If you're late by 10 days, that's really, really exponentially worse. We also have something where we make sure that a data set, if it's like more than 2 years out of date, we just give an additional negative onto their score, because there are very few cases where data sets need to be sitting around that long without being marked as like something that's retired or archived, something like that. I hope that answers your question.
One more question maybe from online.
There are no further questions online yet.
Okay, one last one in the room. Yep.
So, did you guys look at the standards for data sets emerging in the AI space? Like, I'm thinking of data sheets for data sets, like by Timnit Gebru and others. Like, did you guys look at those standards?
No. Short answer, we didn't, man. I'd be happy to learn more about that after if you're sticking around. That's not even something that crossed your mind.
All right, and speaking of sticking around, I think Mac is gonna stick around, so we'll do a breakout to continue that conversation in the Q&A in just a sec. But one last round of applause. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all the work on the data set. And you can keep capturing.